where I, Dara Kalima, the community poet, chat with folks who speak on behalf of their respective communities. This person I met, definitely in the before times, meaning before the pandemic. We shared the same stage at a venue that I no longer frequent, but that doesn't matter anymore. But they did this poem that just brought a different perspective to the stage that you weren't just hearing before. And I was just like, yo, okay, I need to know this person. This person's dope. And it wasn't just the poem, it was the people around this person, that like the amount of love that was around this person, that I was like, yo, this person's a good person. So it's not just the poem that's dope, it was the amount of love that was showering around this person. I was like, okay, this person's cool. I want to know this person. This poet was just so amazing, and they're just amazing. And then the pandemic happens, and I've been on stages with this person multiple times over. So like I'm gonna say that. So I've gotten to like interact with them multiple times and really got to appreciate their craft, because their craft is stellar. But I am so happy that the pandemic has happened, because they sort of changed what they were doing, or they maybe have elevated what they were doing on Instagram. And I have just gotten to appreciate the person more than just as a poet. And so I've gotten to learn more about their culture. I've gotten to learn more about their religion. I've gotten just to appreciate their soul more. And so, and I mean, again, I told you the first thing I noticed was, one, their craft, and then two, the huge amount of people around them that was just like, oh my gosh, I love this guy. So that all said, I am just really excited that they didn't even hesitate when I said, hey, can you do my podcast? So I'm super, 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 super hyped to have this guest on my podcast. Hey guest, tell folks your name.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Navpreet Singh. I am known as Nav the Poet on stage and social media, and appreciate you having me here.
Yay. So Nav, what are your pronouns?
My pronouns are he, him, his.
Awesome. And tell folks about yourself.
Yeah, so I am a poet. I'm a video editor. I'm a content creator. I've been writing and performing for 11 years now, I think. I'm not good at math. That's why I switched majors from engineering to film. Anyway, yeah, so I've been writing, performing, and then as you kind of alluded to, I, in the last few years, have really put an emphasis. I've been doing it, but definitely through the time of the pandemic, I've been putting an emphasis on educating about my faith, which is Sikhi, more commonly known as Sikhism. But everything I do, whether it's art or videos or whatever it is I'm doing, it's all with the purpose of breaking barriers and building bridges so that together we can create a better world.
See, this is, I said, I appreciated getting to know their soul. Like who in their description about themselves says that statement? I just want to put that out there. Who says that in their statement as they describe themselves? All right. So what communities do you represent?
As I mentioned, I am a follower of the Sikh faith, so I represent the Sikh community. I represent the Punjabi community. Punjab is a state within India. I am a movie and television fanatic. I guess content creator as well. I could represent that community. Those are the big ones. Video editing community. I don't know if that's a community, but like, I'll do it. I'll take it. Those are, yeah, I mean, I'm a nerd all around, so superheroes, comics, all that
Love
stuff
it.
as well.
Do you have any siblings?
I do.
All right, where do you sit in the sibling ratio? Big, baby, middle,
So
oldest?
I'm one of three. I'm right in the middle.
Oh, you're the middle child.
Yeah.
That's a whole community in itself, because
Yeah.
y'all are special. I'm the baby, but y'all middle children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're something.
Yeah. I mean, because y'all always feel like the ignored ones. Y'all always, I mean, but I don't see how you could be ignored. But my brother's the middle child, and he makes it known that he has feelings about being the middle child. So
Yeah. I mean, maybe when I was younger, but my brothers and I, we're three brothers, by the way, but
Okay.
we just, our relationships with ourselves, our family, it's evolved to the point where we're all like, it doesn't impact us, as at least not to my knowledge. Maybe it still impacts my other brothers, but I don't think it does. I think we've understood our
Your
place, and
places.
yeah.
Is there a big gap between y'all, or are you guys close in age?
So my older brother and I are 3 years apart, and
Okay.
then my younger brother and I are 6 years apart. So that makes older to younger 9 years apart. So somewhat, um, which is why I always say this: my little brother, he's super mature and super disciplined. And I think
Mm,
it's just because he grew up with older people, like not only my brother and myself, but also our friends. So he was always around older people, and like he's super disciplined. He's super brilliant. I can brag about my little brother for days, by the way. But yeah, it's just I think it's that age gap.
yeah. Okay. I love it. I love it. I'm smiling because I'm the baby. I don't know that my brother brags about me at all, but he definitely is. He's 8 years older than me,
Oh, okay.
so there's that similar age gap sort of thing happening. So yeah. So anyway, so then which community are we specifically talking about today?
I would love to speak about the Sikh community and about Sikh as a whole. Yeah, it's my faith is a huge passion of mine, so I'm always happy to discuss it with people.
Awesome. So have you always been dedicated to your faith, or
No. um, I was born and raised in a Sikh family. I went to Gurdwara, a Sikh house of worship, every Friday evening with my parents. Those were when the services typically took place. I learned, our history and different things about the faith, the beliefs, practices, but I I would call myself a Sikh when I was younger, but I wasn't dedicated to it. But then I got to a certain point in my life where I actually completely fell out of the faith and I stopped following it. Um, and a lot of it was my own struggles, but it was also the confronting the fact that a lot of the people that I was around, my community, were not practicing the faith as I was taught, like the things like ego and judgment and hatred. And I was like, these are in the antithesis of our teachings, and yet these people around me that claim to be, devout and practicing Sikhs weren't exuding those beliefs, and that definitely turned me away from the faith because I was like, how could I be part of a community that isn't really like adhering to the beliefs from my understanding? So it took me a while, actually, through poetry, that I really started to rediscover my faith and my understanding and connection. And it reminded me basically that, like, regardless of the people, and while the people do make up a good part of the faith, the principles don't change no matter what the people are doing. And so I always hold on to that. At the end of the day, am I practicing those principles, and how can I help myself and others be more in line with Sikh teachings?
I want everyone who practices a faith to really sit there with that question. I was raised Christian, and I did not. I mean, I went to a religious school. I have family members who are religious leaders,
Mhm.
and I walked away. Not walked away, but I was not at all active for a long time, and then got there, and with everything that's happening now, and finding myself essentially in an evangelical church,
Mm,
and evangelical things happening, and like you hear evangelical in such a worst way.
yeah,
Evangelical is really just about spreading the word. It is
right,
not about what you're seeing. And I'm not co-signing some of the stuff that's happening right now, but it is back to that same exact question, like, or am I doing what I believe my faith is taught,
right.
versus being caught up in what a lot of other people are doing that they think the faith is taught, you know?
And what's so interesting for me to explore that with is that there are people who disagree on certain things about the faith with me, and I know to them, they believe they are adhering to the faith as it is supposed to be, just as I feel like I'm adhering to it. So then it's a matter of he said, she said, he said, they like. There's maybe there are some elements you can say are like definitively 100% this is the way, but a lot of things are, I'm sure you understand too, up to interpretation. And then it's like, so then what do we do? Like we kind of reach an impasse, because it's like they're saying this thing and they think they're right. I'm saying this thing, I think I'm right. And is me saying they're wrong not following the faith? Like, it's a very complicated thing, because I'm like, am I just adhering to my ego when I'm telling someone that they're wrong
Mm,
about something, versus like, oh, I'm supposedly following the beliefs, so it's always something for me that's really a challenge to explore when I engage with someone who has a different view or interpretation or understanding of my faith, because I don't want to then, for me, like the biggest thing is the self and like how I practice it. And so if I'm now presenting ego or judgment, I'm going against the teachings. So now I'm
mm.
like, okay, wait, how do I navigate this? It's a complicated thing.
Wow. So can you give someone like me who knows very little about the faith, like faith 101?
Sure. Yeah. So Sikhi, or Sikhism as it's commonly referred to, as I mentioned, started in the 1500s in India, or in the South Asian Punjab region, by this man named Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And the story goes that he was always a wise and kind of reflective spiritual individual, but around the age of 30 he went for a bath in the river, and he returned 3 days later. No one knows where he went or what happened, but he returns 3 days later, and he just has this newfound enlightenment and understanding of the divine, which in Sikhi the tradition goes that it's so the first line in scripture is this phrase called Ik Onkar, and it's usually translated to one God, but really it's about this idea of oneness. And like, when I say oneness, it's not like, oh, peace and harmony kind of thing. It's this belief that literally everything is the divine. Like this idea of you and I, and these separations, these divisions, is a illusion in our belief, and that everything, this desktop, this house, all of it is the divine. The creator resides within the creation, and it's all this oneness. I like to compare it to like the Force in Star Wars. I don't know how familiar you are with Star Wars, but
Of course.
it's a and some people don't like that in comparison, but it's just to help people kind of understand what is, how it is. And so yeah, he began traveling, sharing this wisdom, sharing these philosophies, literally having discussions with people of different faiths, backgrounds, beliefs, and everything. And then also just challenging the status quo at the time, things like the caste system or gender discriminatory practices. And he wanted to really have people practice this idea of oneness, which would entail equality and liberty and the freedom of people to live their lives, healthily and to the fullest. So it was as much a social movement as it was a philosophical, understanding, because he was literally like, in our practice, we aren't supposed to adhere to the caste system. We believe in a gender equality. All people are equal, and so many things like that. There's so many. One of my favorite things about the faith is that there's so many like practical aspects that highlight these. So, for instance, the Siri Darbar Sahib, which is known as the Golden Temple in India, right? It has a door on each side of it as a representation that people from all over, anyone of any
Mm.
background, may enter, may come to the sacred place of worship and join in on the service, on the prayers. Because not every place, not every faith or whatever community does that. Some people have closed practices, and that's fine. But it was just this idea that there is no sense of difference in level, right? Another thing that's huge is so we have this tradition called langar, which is this community kitchen, which is one, free, and two, it's open to anyone. And these are practices in our houses of worship. But what's huge is we all sit on the floor together in rows. And the purpose of that was a statement of everybody being on an equal playing field. So regardless of, especially at that time, your caste or your class or whatever it is, everybody is literally on the same level. And so it's just, there's a lot of examples of these where it just shows that practical practice of these beliefs. Because it's easy to say everyone's equal, everyone, should be, allowed to do this. But then when you have these actual practices, and like gurdwaras or Sikh organizations have served langar to people all over the world in times of disaster, whether it was like a natural disaster like hurricanes, or whether it was during the pandemic. There were a lot of of these places that were making food and then delivering it or giving it to wherever, and so again, just a couple of examples of something that I really love about my faith is just that element of saying a belief and then living by it.
Mm. Wow. Wow. That's beautiful. If only we could all, if only we could all, this world would be so much better.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's with my own community too. Like, we're not all perfect, so I say about my community all the time. Like, could we all just be better at this? Like,
yeah. I mean, we're also all human, and
of course.
humans are human. I will do a bad job of discussing this because I did not open up the article. I do remember seeing it, but there was something in the news recently about a gentleman who was arrested for having a knife because he wouldn't take it off, and ultimately it was and I don't remember where this was. Do you remember where it was?
Yeah, it was at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte.
Thank you. And so, North Carolina's been showing up in the news a lot lately, mostly for really terrible things. So sorry, that was a total side note.
It's fine.
But I feel bad because my dad lives in North Carolina. That's where my people's are from. So I'm just like, North Carolina, I'm gonna need you to do better here.
So I feel sometimes with certain areas.
So either way, so yeah, he had this knife, but it wasn't like it's not like a knife that you're using for reasons, like a person would just run around with a knife. The whole point being that they didn't understand that it was a religious artifact. And so it's like, it would be like, and I don't use a crucifix with like a hanging Jesus on. I don't have anything that has a hanging Jesus because I don't do that, but I do have crosses. I don't even actually wear almost any religious paraphernalia these days, but I do have crosses that will come out 2 or 3 times a year. Not even for religious days, but so like, but it is an equal sort of symbol. So I know there are some symbols or things that are supposed to be worn, done. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. And I appreciate you even bringing up the story. Because one thing I try to do with my page and with my content is educate people about the Sikh faith so that these kinds of things don't happen as much. I know they'll never like stop happening, but if I can even encourage someone to take a moment to get some more understanding, and it has happened. People have messaged me and saying like, because of your videos, like I've advocated for like my coworkers or my friends, who are, so it happens. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm just saying like that's the point of what I'm doing. But yeah, so there are a few articles that Sikhs are instructed to carry, to wear. So to give a little history, in 1699, well, see now I just have to like backtrack a little. So I mentioned Guru Nanak Dev Ji. He was the founder of Sikhi, and a guru is like, for very like lack of a better word, like a teacher, a guide, a spiritual, or it can be a spiritual, like mentor or whatever. But in the Sikh tradition, there are 10 Sikh gurus. So when we use the word guru, we are specifically referring to one of these 10. Actually, there's 11. The 11th is the Shabad Guru, meaning the scripture. We refer to it as the Guru as well. But so the 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, in 1699, on a particular holiday, which was known as Vaisakhi, which was traditionally a harvest festival. It became important to the Sikh community because of this event in 1699. So basically, he called for 5 Sikhs willing to give their heads to their guru. And at first there was hesitation, and then one by one, these 5 Sikhs came up, and he would go into a tent with them, and he'd come out with a bloodied sword. Now, we don't know what happened or anything like that, but the 5 Sikhs at the end came out in like these new regalia. They were looking sharp, looking really, really, nice. And he basically was kind of, I guess the best way I can explain it is like formalizing the community. So he established what is called the Khalsa Panth, which loosely translates to Order of the Pure, but it's this community of Sikhs committed to the Guru's teachings and following the path that the Gurus have instructed us to follow. And so those who follow this path are instructed to have these 5 articles. One is Kes, which is uncut hair. The second is a Kanga, which is a small comb to, well, I'll get into that later. Third is Kashera, which are these like undershorts. Fourth is a Kara, which is a steel bracelet, which I wear right here. And then fifth is a Kirpan, which is a small knife, a sword. It's been kind of like people carry different sizes. There's no like requirement in terms of size and all that stuff. But a lot of meaning has been given to these articles, meaning like, oh, we were given this one for this reason or this for this, but there's no actual explicit reasoning for why these 5 articles were chosen, which is actually something I've only learned in the last few years, because I was always taught that this was for this reason, like the bracelet was for this, and like, so it's very interesting, even again, my own journey, but like, there's no explicit reasoning for these articles. They just were, you know, what we
These
were
are the
given.
things. These are the things you have to have.
Yeah, it was the way I look at it is kind of like to establish an identity for Sikhs, because at the time also, the 10th Guru's father, who was the 9th Guru, he was actually tortured and killed, defending the rights of Hindus to practice their faith. And so a lot of Sikhs were kind of, you know, concerned and like worried about the social and political landscape at the time. And so I feel like, and this is just my view of it, I want that to be clear, it was partially done to establish like an identity so that we can't hide and that we do stand out, because our tradition encourages us to have no fear and no hate, nirpao nirvair, and these are in our scripture as well. And so I think that's just how I look at it, and everybody has their own kind of interpretation, their own significance to it. But so the kirpan, which is the knife, is one of these articles, and Sikhs who have made that commitment are supposed to carry it at all times. Now, living in a Western society where, one, we're very unknown, but also these like practices and principles aren't as familiar, it can become a, what's the word? There can be a confusion, misunderstanding, and it happens a lot, you know. Sikhs even going to airports, like when I want to take my kirpan, I have to put it in my checked baggage. I can't take it on the plane with me. And so there's a lot of this misunderstanding. So that's exactly what happened, is because he had it on him. A student, I think, called the police and reported it. And then the police basically were just like, hey, you can't have that. And this is ultimately what my issue is. There's never an effort made to like come to an understanding in those instances. And I would get it when there's like immediate danger, but he was literally just sitting there. He cooperated with them with no problem. There was never a like, hey, what is this? Why, like, it's, and I'm not an officer, I'm not security, so maybe the proper response is what they did. I you know, but from my perspective of someone who is a religious minority and you know, racial minority as well, it's just, there's such a lack of understanding and knowledge and awareness of our faith and our principles. And so it comes across as very just like negligent of our identity.
Yeah, I didn't know about it. I don't think I've ever seen it here in New York.
Most people keep them under their clothing, so that's the other thing. Like, I made a video talking about it, and a lot of people are like, well, it's a school campus and this and that. And what's funny is, like, when I talked to my mom about it and I showed her the video, both of us were like, he shouldn't have been wearing it out. Like, he should have had undershirt. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, this was totally like I would never, in my mind, there were things he could have done because he should have been aware. Like, when I go to an airport, I know that I can't bring it in my carry-on. So like, I wouldn't ever keep it like in my pockets or on me at all. Like, there's just things you do, in my opinion, have to like make those concessions in a way, or like be attentive of it at least. Like, it's a smaller example, but I once almost got in trouble because I was singing a song that had mentions of like targets and missiles and stuff. Yeah, and I had to like explain that it's a song, show them the song and everything. But ever since then, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna like say the word bomb out in public anymore. Like, even if I'm telling my friends like, oh, my video blew up, I'm not saying that, because I know what this, like, the landscape is. I can't say that without potentially getting into, harm in some way, whether it's to a small degree or it could be to a very severe degree, so there are elements where, but I couldn't even have that conversation when I made my video, because people were just like, well, he shouldn't have done this, and I was just like, so there's no discussion. We can't have any discussion about like how to better approach the situation. It's
Mm,
just like, that's the other part that really bothers me. It's a very, you know one or the other situation, not like, okay, maybe we can see how we can accommodate while also ensuring that, safety regulations are understood and applied.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Like I just, as you were saying that, I wrote on someone's Facebook about something, and I said, shoot, anyone who did such and such. And I got in trouble with Facebook for saying shoot anyone.
Oh my.
Just like, but I wasn't even
Yeah.
saying, okay,
I
whatever.
wonder, did you put a comma? I wonder if that would have made a difference.
It may have, but I really was like, I
No, I
was just
know it's
saying,
absurd, but
I was like, okay. And so now I watch how I say that. I was like, I was just using a figure of speech instead of saying a curse. I was like,
uh,
shoot, anyone who did such and such. And I'm like, oh shoot. Okay.
yeah.
Got it.
No, but
Like,
it's as minorities, we definitely have to be aware of how people are perceiving us. It's unfortunate, but it's not going to change overnight. So what am I going to do? Like, just live my life and then get in trouble every other day for, saying the word bomb? Like, I don't know. I'd rather not. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh goodness, this world. So you can completely decide not to talk about this topic, but since you said bomb, I know you were around here for 9/11, right? You're
yeah,
old enough for that. I don't never know who I'm talking to anymore these days in terms of
yeah, you're right. That's fair.
age. Um, so when 9/11 happened, I immediately thought of all my friends from high school who were Muslim,
Mm,
because I was like, so for the first for the it wasn't 9/11, but it was the vehicle when they did the first bombing of the World Trade
mm,
Center with the car.
okay.
I knew all of, like, that was a thing. And then
Yeah.
I knew my friends had been targeted. In my whole high school, we went to like a mosque and did all that stuff because they always felt targeted. I know that oftentimes the Sikh community gets wrapped right into all of that, not even being tied to the same community, but just proximity. Because
Mm.
people are always like, wait, are you Muslim? Are you not? Are you part of the same group? Are you not? So like, how does that all impact your living in your world, and how do you navigate all of that?
Yeah. I think for me, the most interesting thing, I always say, it's sad that I have to say this, but I'm very fortunate in that I've only ever really faced like verbal harassment. Like, there have been people who've experienced much worse discrimination, violence, and but um but the most interesting thing for me to navigate is advocating for my community while also not pointing the finger at another community, right? Because and Kumail Nanjiani did a bit actually on SNL, I think, when he hosted it, and he was like, Sikh people get targeted, and it's gotta be really tough for them because they gotta be like, I'm not Muslim, not that you should attack them, but like, it was like this funny bit of like, but like, I'm not one of them, so if you're going to attack someone, don't do that because it's wrong. Like, it was that like, and that was a conversation that our community even had, after 9/11, of like, how do we address this? Because some people are like, well, we just say we're not Muslim. And it's like, okay, but then you're basically just saying they're the bad ones, right? And we're the good ones, and like, you should go, right? So it's a very interesting thing for me to navigate, where I am even talking about it, and like, people have asked me like, well, how do you respond? I was like, I mean, it depends on what they say. Like, if someone said like, oh, why don't you, like, why don't you eat pork? I'd be like, oh, I'm not Muslim, right? But if then someone were to like call me a terrorist, I'm not going to respond like, oh, I'm not Muslim, right? Like, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So that's been like something I think about a lot. Not just because I have a lot of Muslim friends, but just because, like, again, that's what our tradition teaches us as Sikhs, is to there's this phrase, it's called Sarvat da Pala, which means the well-being of all. And so we're always striving for that as part of our tradition, to serve everyone, to help everyone. And so that would be, again, going against that teaching. So, but I mean, it's definitely impacted us. And, I'm sure you're at least vaguely familiar with the shooting that took place in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. This a man of, a white supremacist entered a Gurdwara and, opened fire on the congregation, killing 6 people that day, injuring several more. And this was in 2012, August 5th,
Okay.
2012. But yeah, and so like things like that, and there are hate crimes happening all the time, so it's definitely a challenge to navigate personally, but then also as a community, and like, what are we to do? Because I love educating about my faith, but educating only gets you so far as well. And so it's always a question of, what do we do? No, like, what more can we do? What do we do next? Like, and that's the thing, is the responsibility of protecting marginalized communities falls on the marginalized communities, as opposed to like the system of education being like, hey, maybe we need to educate, like maybe we need to make Sikhi a mandatory part of the curriculum, because it's not. It's slowly being put into different states, but every state has their own, curriculum. So, but it's things like that. Like, there's no, efforts being made other than by our own community of like, hey, we need it in the curriculum. We need it in the curriculum. And that's, again, state by state. And in some states, there aren't as many Sikhs, so they're not necessarily pushing for that same level as like here in New York or New Jersey or California, where there's a really big population of Sikhs. So it's it's just like, there's certain things we can do, but there's only so much we can do. But then that's what we have to do, right? We have to do whatever we can and hope that it has some impact.
So yeah, okay. I'm gonna leave my next. I had another question, but I'm just gonna leave that alone because I already know the answer, so it doesn't matter to ask the question. It was
But
just
now
like
I'm
me
curious what the
being.
question
It was
is.
just me being devil's advocate because everything keeps changing so quickly, right? Like
Right.
everything is changing right now. We're discovering, or we're not discovering, but we're more openly discussing different gender expressions, different
Hmm.
everything. And so you say that your job is to support or protect, or I'm messing up language already, but everyone. So
Hmm.
that still continue as everything keeps changing, it's still
Yeah.
everyone. It's
Yeah.
always everyone. I
Yeah.
love that.
That, for me, it is. I mean, like, and I don't even know, I mean, I know it comes from Sikhi, but also there's just like something in me, and maybe it is, again, just comes from Sikhi, but I don't, something I've been able to do is like learn how to not hate people. Like, just, I don't carry hate. I get frustrated, I get annoyed, and sometimes someone does something, whether it's like small and personal or like more, you know, like on a very like large scale level. And I'm like, obviously I'm like, that sucks, but I don't know. It's just carrying hate. I've done it for so long that I got tired of it, and I just
Mm,
stopped doing it. I was like, this is such a waste of my energy to have hate, because maybe for some people it works, but hate doesn't fuel me to want to make change. Hope
mm,
makes me want to make change.
mm. Wow. I'm gonna have to learn from you. I
Yeah,
I I've been struggling. Not I don't hate anyone,
right.
but there's some people right now that I don't really love.
That's and it's completely fair. Like, I'm never saying my way is the way. It's just what works for me. And like, I know for other people, like, I was having a conversation with my friend, and you know, they were like, fear helps them kind of start to do something, and then they follow the faith, their faith in doing it, or accomplishing it. I was like, hey, if that works for you, like, I can't be run by fear either.
Mm,
Fear cripples me. Like, it makes me not want to do anything. For some people, fear makes them want to. So I always have to fall back on faith, on belief and hope. And
mm,
it's the belief that things can and will be better
mm,
through our efforts that drives me. And it's hard sometimes. There's some days where I'm just like, man, this is pointless. Like, there's no hope to anything. And like, I can get really down on myself some days, but I always pull myself out, because I've seen it. firsthand in my own life. Like, poetry saved my life. I was in a really dark place, and poetry helped me recognize so much in myself and in the world.
Mm,
But it was only until I was able to recognize everything within me that I was able to see outside and see, like, oh, people can be good, because I wanted to see people as bad when I was in that mindset. But
mm,
then once I started to see myself as potentially being capable of good, then I was like, oh, other people can as well. And people have shown that kindness to me in so many instances in my life. I like really can't even recount them all because they happen all the time, especially because I am out and about performing and traveling and interacting with people so much. One of my favorite interactions. So my first set of college shows happened in 2016, literally like 3 days after the election. And my first shows were in Louisiana, Texas, and Tennessee. And I had these preconceived notions of like, oh no, this is gonna be terrible. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, so I was in Louisiana, I had a show, and then I ran into some people there, and like, um, they were actually like there's a small population of Sikhs in that area, Lake Charles, Louisiana, where I went, and McNeese State University. Shout out to them because they were the first show to like, I don't know, I just feel like they took a chance on me, and I really appreciate that opportunity. And so anyway, met some of these students, and then they, you know, took me out to dinner one day, and in the booth next to us was this police officer, and he randomly started talking to us. I don't know why. I guess that's just what people in the South do. Um, and you know, the one of the people that I was with was like, "Oh, he's from New York." I was like, "Why would you tell him this? This is the worst idea." And so he goes, the police officer goes, "Oh, how are they taking Trump winning there?" And I'm like, "Oh gosh, we're really gonna get into this, huh?" But we had like an hour and a half long conversation. We agreed on things, we disagreed on things, we went back and forth, but like it made me go like, okay, I need to stop being so like assuming things about people. And like there's plenty I was like, I don't like what you're saying, but there was plenty where I didn't give him the benefit of the doubt before he spoke. And once he did, I was like, oh, okay, he has a similar idea of like, you know, what is causing what, or what, you know, like, so it just gave me an opportunity to really reflect on how I view people. Um, and I think until we really do that, we can't really we can't really focus on how people view us.
mm.
Um, at least that's how I have processed it. And so I've taken the time to like reflect on every interaction I have with people, and I've done my best. I've gotten really good at not making assumptions of people. And I just let them be as they are when they interact with me. And I think that has also helped in my interactions, because people have told me they've felt that, they've sensed that when I talk to them, they don't feel judged by me. They don't feel like, you know, I'm assuming the worst of them. They are who they are. And it surprisingly makes people share more with me, just because I like sharing, and then they realize, oh, this person is willing to listen, and at least I think I am. And so yeah, I think it's just a matter of we want to perceive the other person as whatever we've applied based on where they come from, how they grew up, what communities they're a part of, right? It's really easy to look at someone of whatever religion and assume, like I get atheists that assume that I'm like the worst because I am religious, right? Just because I'm religious, you know, and then they're Christians, they're Muslims who assume that I adhere to a false religion. Like I get all this stuff from all different people just based on this. And so one of my favorite things is when I walk on stage and I see people's faces. They are so confused because they're like, who is this guy? What is he going to do? And then in the first 30 seconds of me performing, jaws dropped open, or they're like vibing with what I'm doing. And like, I broke a barrier right there. I broke a barrier. And it's one of the most beautiful experiences that I ever have.
That's because you're also, it's not even like you're just an amazing poet. It's like that's partially what it is. So it's not, it doesn't even matter what you look like. It helps that that's part of what makes people change their assumption immediately once you start speaking. But you're also just an amazing poet, because that's just what you are. Like there's other people who I've seen on stage, I'm just like, and they lived up to expectation in all the bad ways.
I know what you mean.
So you just are that stellar. So there's also that. And let's not take that away from
Yeah, but
from
like
what
that's
you
the thing
do.
is I revel in it, right? Because I know my talent. I'm well aware of my skill. And so I know that when I start that they're gonna like change, but I know that one, a lot of people are weary about poetry, I'm sure you know.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, there's this poet, he's South Asian, he's got turban and a beard. South Asians are known as like nerdy and weird and awkward. And then I come with this flow and they're just like, oh shoot, I didn't know he could spit. And I just love that moment of just really shattering all expectations because I
Yeah.
know what I am and now people have a better idea of who I am. And it makes
Yeah.
them hopefully go like, huh, maybe people like that or people in general are more than what I perceive to be.
Yeah. 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 And I mean you at least the things that I've seen, you're always calling out the assumptions of what people have in your work. So it's just like,
Yes,
yes,
it's the
yes,
best.
yes.
I love twisting things. Like it's not just wordplay as a poet, but like concepts. I love messing with concepts. Like there's this one poem, I'm not gonna perform the whole thing, but in the a couple of the lines, I just go, oh, what is it? So when I share my rage, you should go call TSA. There's no need to randomly search for me. I'm right up on this stage, and my words turn into bullets when they're lifted off the page. Turn the mic held in my hand into a shiny new AK. It's
Nice.
I confront it. I confront the stereotypes. And I'm like, but no, this is what I do. You think that's what I do. This is what I do. This is how I bring terror. And the terror that I bring is this
Truth.
disrupting the status quo and all these perceptions and preconceived notions.
Uh, no. Oh my gosh. You don't know how much I miss being in space with you. Like you
Oh
don't,
my gosh.
uh,
That
like,
means a lot because I've definitely missed being around like other creatives. Like I've found a community through social media, through TikTok especially, but a lot of these people are learning to be creative. And it's no dig at them. I love them so much, but it's just like I'm at a different level in my creative journey. And so when I encounter other poets, like I ran into, or not ran into, but I met up with Leah a little while ago, and just like literally just being with her, I'm just like,
mm-hmm,
this is amazing because like she gets it, and like there's no,
mm-hmm,
it's an unspoken language of just
mm-hmm,
being an expert creative, I guess is the better. I don't want to dig at some of my friends, but like it's a different level, it's a different
mm-hmm,
and it's just, yeah, there's a different feeling and different vibe when you're around those people. And then Justin was also there. It was just like,
mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, like I miss this energy so much.
Yes. Uh, yes, yes, and yes, and yes, and one more yes.
Yeah. And that's
Yes.
even what happened to me. I was telling you last night, I reconnected with my creativity, and like I was up till 4 a.m. because I finished a poem that I had in my notes for like 4 years because I wanted to, like, most of my poems I'm very like go with the flow of whatever comes to me, it comes to me. This one I wanted to craft in a particular way
Mm,
because it was a really important message. It's just about media, and it's about like just like the superficiality of it all. And so like I broke it into 3 parts, and basically the first part addresses like just television and how television is, and like all media has become like this selling, this ad, basically there's perpetual ads is what television, social media are anyway. And then within it, I love it, is I after that first stanza I insert an ad break because it's all a commentary on that, but the ad break is like commentating on like how we've commercialized and monetized change and like revolutions. And it's like, oh, you want to get hats, tees, and mugs and put hashtags of like, we will be free and stuff like that. And then the second portion is on like more like the image that we try to portray on social media. And then the second ad is about like news, but it's like the superficiality of news. And like
mhm,
I build it up as like, oh my God, this big thing happened. And then it's like 2 people got divorced, like celebrities that got divorced. So it's like, and then the news and how it's all biased report, like just all of it. And so it was something I really wanted to craft very particularly. So I spent a lot of time like sitting on it. And then, with the pandemic, I told you my creativity kind of like got out of
Mhm.
flux. And so, but like I finished that poem last night, and then it just like the floodgates opened, and then I was just like performing in my living room for like 2 hours. And I was like, it's 4 a.m. I should go to sleep, but I really missed this. Like it was like reconnecting with an old friend where I was like, oh my God, I
Mhm.
miss being this creative. And like now I'm itching to be on stage so much. Like
Mm.
I had a fear of being on stage because of the pandemic. I was just like, can I do it? Like, have you seen Space Jam? I'm sure you've seen.
Yes.
You know the part where like they lose their powers, the ball takes their powers and everything?
Mhm.
I felt like that. I felt like that. I felt like I couldn't, dribble the ball anymore. I was like, I don't know if I can go on stage and perform again. Like, and then yesterday it was when they got it back. I was like, it's back.
Yes, I can relate. It's funny because someone texted me today and just checking in, and they asked me how writing was going, and I was like, I'm not. And
Yeah.
I've been writing like so, but for me, I don't know if you've been paying attention to any of my social media because I'm not really doing anything on social media
Mm.
right now other than announcing the podcast when it comes out. But like I was writing like a crazy person until July.
Oh wow.
July, everything came to a screeching halt. So I was writing 20, 30 poems a month,
Wow.
all pandemic, all pandemic. I have written over 1,000 poems since the pandemic started. I have written my total poetry count is over 2019 poems because I had at one point messed up naming all my poems. So I counted everything and did all that stuff. Like I'm literally opening my shelter in place count but like July, I wrote 3 poems.
Wow.
And then I rebounded in August and September. And like I lead this group Poetics U, and so I'm writing a little bit because we're doing a class, but
Mhm.
it's not the
Yeah.
writing that I would do.
Right.
And I am in a season of depression right now,
Mm.
medicated, everything. Like this is a very, and I've never been medicated before. So I'm in a different place for me.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I'm just like, I'm like the things that I'm writing is because I have to. Is not
Mm.
because I'm not just like I have a poem in my head.
Yeah.
Like I would normally be not
Yeah.
there at all. Like there's nothing. Nothing is just like poem. It's more like deadline. Let's
Ah,
write
yeah.
something because I
Yeah.
have to. And if it wasn't for deadlines, I would not be writing anything at this moment. And it's weird, but like and because of the pandemic I'm not and because of other things, there's other personal things happening,
Sure.
hence all of this stuff, but like I'm not on stages like I used to be.
Of
And I had
course.
like before I had like I got to be at 30 places this year, I got to hit this number, yada yada whatever. And because I severed ties with the place that we were going to,
Mm.
I also killed a lot of my performances, which is why I don't see Leah anymore.
Yeah.
As much as I love her, she knows why.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like
yeah.
I will always support Leah. Leah says
Of
she's doing
course.
something independently, I'm with her.
Yeah.
Tied to that, I'm not doing that. Because I just can't tie my name to that organization anymore.
Understand.
But but like that also ultimately killed some of my performing avenue.
Yeah.
So now I'm
Yeah.
just like, wait, where do I go?
Yeah.
What do I huh? So I'm with you because I'm like, I want to get back on stage, but I'm also not socializing anymore. Like it's everything has changed in the last few months.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, where do I go? What do I do? How do I get on? What? But I
Yeah.
definitely and like it's so funny because during the pandemic, I've understood the difference between this big screen and the small screen. I come from a theater background, so I can
Mm.
appreciate a little bit of your nerding out over film because I
Yeah.
nerd out over theater
Right.
to an extent. Like you can't put me in a theater and me not look at the light lineup.
Yeah.
I'm like I'm looking for the booth where the tech group is. Like,
Yeah.
and I may not know any of these terms or anything anymore, but I'm just like, okay, they got all the lights over
No, but
there. They're
yeah.
doing that, and like I automatically am searching for those things
Yeah.
because that's nerd dard back to like I'm like, oh, this is what we're doing. So
Yeah.
that's immediately my like default. Like, where's the light board? Okay, so over there. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Like I don't have to do anything with any of that, but I just like automatically my brain kicks into that.
Yeah.
So I my brain just stopped as well with that. But like I oh shoot, see, lost the thought, mid thought. This is guys, as you
You're saying
age,
big screen,
this
small
happens.
screen. You're like big.
Yes. So big thank you. as you age, this is what happens. I'm gonna tell y'all, those people listening, you start forgetting some thoughts real fast. And there's also COVID brain because I am, still healing from COVID, guys.
Mm,
So that all said, doing the online performances definitely got me understanding small screen and
yeah.
performance and my voice and what happens with a microphone versus
Ye-
away from a microphone. Like I definitely started understanding that a lot more, and it
Mm,
did actually enhance my performance on in front of people, but it hampered my performance in front of people because I was reading from my computer. I always read. I don't memorize.
sure.
I started memorizing a little bit, but I read. So now I got paper in front of me again on the stage. I was like, wait, how do I read this paper on the stage?
Right. Yeah.
So I had to go back to learn how to read a paper on the stage.
Yeah. I mean, see, I'm always impressed that with people who read because like my thing is I feel like I'm too focused on what I'm reading and like keeping track to like to emphasize. And like you know me, I have a very
Yes.
big expressive state. So I'm just like and also holding the paper or the book or whatever, I'm just like, I'm now only using one hand. Like, how does this work? Like I need both hands. Like even sometimes I film just holding my mic and I'm like, this is just so weird. It's just
It definitely, I got a little spoiled because like I can read the stuff in front of me on the screen
yeah,
and do this. So like I got that little bit of
yeah.
taste of looking like I knew what I was talking about. And now I'm back on the stage with like, and wait, where did I put it? And like, can I
Yeah.
see the light? And like, I was like, oh, this is different again. I don't
Yeah.
remember these rules. But
Yeah.
there is something beautiful about being in front of people and having their energy coming at you. And man, if you get back on the stage, if you're featuring somewhere not at that place, let me know because I will be in your audience if I can.
Yeah. I only know of actually I may know of a couple, but I know of one. They do it like once a month. It's called Subdrift NYC.
Okay.
Um, I think it's like South Asian like organized. So that's
Mm-hmm.
really cool. But yeah, I'll definitely let you know. I don't know when I will actually go out to perform yet. I gotta like look and decide.
Well, just keep me in the know because I'm a fan. I was a fan from the first moment I heard you.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
I am. I've always been like you were just you
That's
were
the
known.
other thing is like, I mean, look, I some of my videos get hundreds of thousands of views. Comments are really nice, but there's nothing like someone saying to your face, like how much they. And it's not just like, oh, it's an ego boost. It's just there's a genuine connection there when someone like wants to talk to you, because like a comment, someone's gonna leave a comment, right? But like what I love even more than performing, I love performing. I love when I walk off stage and someone comes up to me and starts sharing me their stories.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely love listening to them share. Like, I don't mind if they ask me questions and stuff, but I'd rather they tell me like, oh, like this poem reminded me of like this thing with my dad or with, my
Mm-hmm.
own experience. And like, I love that. And I will
Yeah.
do that for hours. Like after a show at like colleges, I'll have students that just come up to me and talk to me and I'm at the school for another hour or two because like they have time. I have time unless I have another show sometimes, but most of the time it's like one show a day. So I have time to talk to whoever and like we'll like get lunch and we'll chat and it's like a really human connection which you don't get from like strangers unless that, right? Because no other reason would a stranger walk up to you and be so intimate and personal with you on like in general. Sure, there's
Mm-hmm.
some people, some weirdos like me who will, but in general, people won't come up to you and like I remember this one student because like I think you've heard the poem about my father and his
Mm-hmm.
journey. Yeah. So this student came up to me and he was just like, my father got deported like twice, and then on the third time he was finally able to bring the entire family. So like I really resonated with like the sacrifice and the hard work that your father made and like just the pride and love you have for him. And I was just like, yeah, no one's gonna come up and tell me that. Like if I was just at a bookstore, right? Like I was just gonna walk up to me and be like, oh, like my father, look, it's only because of poetry and only because I choose to be so vulnerable on stage that people are like, oh, I can share with this guy and like it won't be weird. And I love that.
And it's like, the whole thing about representation, right? Like, I don't know many other people, if any, who were like you on a stage doing what you do. And so it's so important to have you being you, representing and giving other people place and voice. And especially like here, right? Like,
Mhm.
so now so part of the, because of the poetry school I'm in, you know, we have a partner who is, she was born in Dubai, but she's Indian. So, you know, she's connected to both communities, and she's back in Dubai now. So like she's in that community, and so she represents, but she also went to school in England. So she's like, so she's our Indian representation for our group. And when we first started, we had a huge Indian representation in our programs, and that was great. But like, they're in India.
Yeah.
They're not here, you
Yeah.
know? And we have like one Indian student here, and I mean, we love her, but like, you know, they're not really in the States here. They're really in India, and that's, and I mean, it's an international school, so it's great.
Yeah.
But like, you don't get a lot of people mixing here like that.
Yeah.
And so it is amazing when you have Leah, you, Hatris, Justin, all in the same place. Like there's all these different cultures sharing space, talking about how we exist. And just like, that is, that's why I love New York, but that's what makes America amazing. That's one of the good things about this place.
Yeah.
So tell me something beautiful about your community.
Ooh, well, that's a really wonderful question. Um, and it's a funny thing because if you ask someone who isn't Sikh, um, and if they're familiar with the faith, or they have some interaction with the community, I get so many people praising the community, and it's really funny because I'm like, you've never met the Sikhs I've met. Like, I have a bit of a skeptical, critical view of my community, but I love my community because um it's something I mentioned earlier, which is just like so seva is this tradition of ours, and seva loosely translates to selfless service, and there's a lot of ways that can be shown. And I feel like my community does a really great job in participating in seva in many ways, whether it is serving food to people, or it's fighting injustice for our own community, for other communities. At the core of our faith and our practice is speaking out and working for the betterment of everyone, which is, I had mentioned that earlier, sarbatapala. And yeah, sometimes we struggle in some ways, but there's a very visible effort made, and you can see it with some of the Sikh organizations that exist in the US or in the world even. Some I've volunteered or partnered with even, and then just individuals. Like I've seen Sikhs who attended Black Lives Matter protests, and they have a whole Sikhs for Black Lives posters, signs. Like there are Sikhs all around that are doing things on an individual level, a local level, and then on a more federal level. And I'd like to think I have some role in that as well. I strive to speak in support of my community as much as I can, much to the chagrin of some of the people in my community. but it's I know based on the responses I get from non-Sikhs that I am having some of a positive impact on helping people better understand us. And so I love that we are guided by this belief of selfless service and oneness, and this idea that all people should be able to live a fulfilling life, which means providing them with basic amenities and just like the necessities to live, and then going beyond that as well, and then striving for equal rights and for all of us to be seen as equal and as free.
Can someone convert into this faith?
Yeah, absolutely. There are many. Actually, some of my friends I know, and it's really been eye-opening to talk to them because they're Black and Sikh, and they came from a Christian background, and then they converted. And it's been eye-opening because they've shared how they've experienced racism within the community. And I'm like,
within the Sikh community?
Yeah. And it doesn't surprise me. It just disheartens me because I'm just like, again, here we are preaching all this equality and this love for everyone, yet in our own spaces, in the spaces of worship too. And that one shocked me actually. So like there's, at the end of service, they hand out, it's called prashad. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. But it's this sweet little like I honestly don't even know how to explain it.
Mhm.
But it's just, it's food, right? They
Mhm.
hand out food, everybody, and some of these friends have told me that they have been skipped over. Yeah. And it's like, what other reason would you have for skipping them over other than because they are black? And I'm just like, like literally in front of our guru, in the guru kar is a guru's house. That's what it means. In the guru kar, in the guru's house, you do this, like, it's not that it's okay outside of it either, but like really like that you, so it's just like, that's why I got stumped a little, because I was like, part of me doesn't like talking about how great or these great things about the community, because there's so much we still have to address, whether it is racism or it's misogyny or casteism, which shouldn't exist in our community, but it does. And it's just like, it's all these things. But I also am not afraid to talk about them. And that's why I said, like, much to the chagrin of some people from my community, because when I do talk about them, they get upset at me for talking about these things, even though it's literally what our gurus did and encourage us to do. But then I get told I shouldn't be comparing myself to the gurus. And I'm like, but that's all we do, is we're like, the gurus did this, we're supposed to live like them. So we're naturally comparing ourselves to them. It's this whole thing. I'm getting on a huge tangent, but the point is that, like, it's a really interesting thing for me to talk about my faith, but also then make sure I'm trying to hold ourselves accountable, so as to not make it seem like we are better than, and that we don't have any issues, because we have plenty of issues.
So would you then say that, um, forgive, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, so you can absolutely correct me.
Okay.
But would you then say like that hypocrisy is something that frustrates you about the state of your community, or are there other things that you would say that frustrate you?
The hypocrisy is definitely a huge part of it. I mean, the other parts are the actual acts of like bigotry and prejudice, um, that are easily just guided by ego and judgment. But um, the hypocrisy adds to the frustration, because it's like, not only are you being prejudiced, but then you're also being hypocritical, because then you'll like go out and preach how Sikh he is about equality, but you don't practice that equality. So it just makes it worse. You know, the act itself is terrible, right? Prejudice of any kind, I think, is horrible. But then the fact that you're like, but like, we love everyone, but you don't is the point. And that's what frustrates me, is like,
Mm.
just be honest about yourself. Look, if you don't like people, you don't like people, and we can then address that, right? But if you're gonna go out and tell people that, no, I do like people, when you don't, it's like, it's just an extra layer of frustration, where I'm just like, I I can't get to the addressing you don't like people, because you don't even want to see that hypocrisy of yourself, you
Mm.
know? So it's really, and like, it's the same thing when I talk about misogyny within the community and sexism. And like, it's a conversation I have with a lot of Sikh women, where these people who perpetuate this misogyny will hold up like historical Sikh women as like, oh, these are like the right way to be a Sikh woman. But like, today's Sikh women, like, this is what they say, is like, today's Sikh women do this, and don't do this. I'm just like, yeah, it's easy for you to, and my friend said this, I don't want to take credit, my friend said this, like, yeah, it's easy for you to talk about this woman because she's not around anymore. She's history. So it's very easy for you to talk about how great she is. Though I imagine if she was around today, you wouldn't be talking that same, praise. You'd be saying, oh, she's the problem, because that's just misogyny in a nutshell. um, and so, yeah, it's a lot of that I have to combat. And then on top of combating that, I get people telling me that I'm speaking ill about my community. And I'm just so there were these attacks that had happened in Queens, in Richmond Hill, against Sikhs. And the police had put out a suspect, and it was a black man. And on the posts of these like videos or these things was so much hatred towards the black community. And so I made a video, and I was just like, hey, how about in the pursuit of justice, we don't be anti-black? And then people started calling me all these names. And I was just like, what? Like, all I said was, don't be hateful towards one community while trying to also advocate for our own. It's not that complicated. This isn't a and or, like, it's a, both. Don't do both things, or sorry, do one and not the other, but people are like, oh, you're a woke clown and stuff. I was just like, what? It's just so it's not funny, but like, I have to laugh at it in order to not let it get to me sometimes. Like, I just have to laugh at the ignorance. because if I let it frustrate me, then like I won't be able to continue what I do. I'll get too focused on that as opposed to doing what I do. And what I do is I strive to spread understanding of all kinds.
Yeah, so it's funny because I have a lot of different feelings about the representation of Christianity.
Mm,
And the best compliment I've gotten about how I show up as a Christian was from someone who many Christians wouldn't appreciate. And it's just one of my friends who's a gay man married to a man.
yeah,
And he was like, you're the definition of Christianity and how you should operate. And it's because like one, I love him. Like he's one of my dearest friends. And that's just like whatever you do don't got nothing to do with me,
yeah,
like it's like that. And it's between you and your maker. Ain't got nothing to do with me. I will love you no matter what you do. And if
yeah,
you need my help, you need my support, you need me to pray for you, you need me to fight for you, I got you. I got your
yeah,
back. And that's just what it is in the end of the day. Like it has nothing to do with anything else. And that's just like I've always just loved this dude, right? Like I've known him I won't do that count because that's makes me feel old. But I've known him for a very long time. And that's just it. But like it was a huge compliment for me because he has been so ostracized by his family who is very Catholic or very Christian,
well,
whatever version of it. And so he has a very different feeling about the faith because of the way people have presented their beliefs on anything, same sex, anything. And I'm just like,
yeah,
that's because they don't like, to me, it's like, love God and love others. And so even when I argue with other Christians, and I don't argue with other Christians anymore because it's not worth my energy.
yeah,
But when I used to do this, it would be like, but so even if you're right and they're an abomination, isn't it like if God creates everyone and therefore we are to love everyone, then maybe they're just a test for us on how we love everyone. And so even if we don't agree, if we just are being tested on loving everyone, don't you want to just love everyone? You
right,
know, like, is that
yeah,
not the minimum that you like? Is that not like, I don't know. And like, don't we just want to try that technique? And no one even wants to reach that far. I'm just like, I don't get how we can't just start there, you
right.
know? Like,
That's literally the same conversation I've had with people. Because there's also a lot of homophobia within the Sikh community, and that's a whole. I don't want to get into that too much right now. But like I've had the same conversation where I was like, okay, regardless of what you think about their identity, the gurus say ik onkar, oneness, no hate, no fear. How is what you're saying about them practicing that? That's just like I just want to get through that question. But like you said, they don't want to have that. They're just like, no, no, not it's not allowed, blah blah blah. And I'm just like, you're not. So there's nothing here. Okay, great. Like it's like you said, I just don't waste my time arguing with them anymore.
yeah, let me know when if we both make it, to the next place, whatever
Yeah,
that place is. I guess I'll see you there.
yeah.
Like I could be wrong, you could be wrong. I don't know who's wrong or right, but you know
That's the
what?
thing. I tell people, I always say this to myself. I say this when I talk to people. I could be 100% wrong. I'm well aware, and not just with faith, like with anything. Like if
Mhm.
you told me, like if you asked me directions, I could be like, "Oh, you go this way." I could be so sure and be like, "But I could be wrong." Like I just accept that I could quite possibly be wrong on every single thing I am saying and doing, and that has made my understanding of the world around me a lot easier. Because I'm just like, if I don't walk into places thinking I know everything, even if I do, even if this is like my expertise, I don't walk into places thinking I know everything, because there very well could be something I don't know, or someone who knows more than me, or something that comes out on the walk to the building that I just never saw that news article, which was like, hey, that thing, yeah, no, we realize it's not, like I just
Mhm.
don't know.
Pluto's not a planet anymore, or maybe it
Yeah.
is again. Who knows? Like we grew up knowing it was one, but I don't know if it is or isn't anymore. They keep changing their minds.
And instead of just being like, well, this is what I learned, this is what I grew up knowing, like just be like, okay, but maybe what you grew up learning isn't right. I learned
Yes.
plenty growing up that was not right, especially like in terms of being a man. And I was just like, I had to work through all of that. And like kind of what you were saying about like that was a compliment to you. Like I've you know, over the pandemic, I've tried to like date and stuff through dating apps. And I've had women tell me like this has been like it didn't work out, but they've been like, but this has been a really positive interaction I've had with a guy, which doesn't happen. I take that as a huge compliment because
Mhm.
like I've heard horror stories from women. So I was like, the fact that like you felt that this conversation or this time we spent together was not like horrible, that's a compliment to me. Like,
Yeah. I mean, like, and I will say thank you for, I mean, I don't see every video you've done, but there was definitely a video you did one of the earlier videos that were on this topic. Like, I can't even remember it, but I remember going like, I'm so glad he's doing this topic. And it was about, it was about sexism of women or something. I was just like, yes,
yeah,
thank you. So whatever it was, I'd have to go back and dig through the
that's
archives of all
fine.
your videos, but I was like, thank you for doing that. So I'm just say that now. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And that's the weird thing about being online is like if you make a video or multiple videos talking about that topic, then people start to question if you're doing it like if you're performative about it. And so now I'm like, do I have to have like a ratio of videos that like tell like the truth is I just speak on what I feel at the time that whatever I feel is I want to speak about on like, you know, I've gotten similar thoughts because I've talked about Black Lives Matter and I've talked about injustice against the community, and then people are just like, "But like, is he genuine?" And I was like, "There's no way for you to know, I guess. I mean, like, I can tell you I'm genuine, but you don't have to believe me." And I totally respect that. Like, women have told me that, like, I don't know, and it's just like, okay, that's fair. Like, you don't have to believe that I'm being genuine and authentic about it. I understand the skepticism. I don't take any offense to it because like I can be skeptical of people all the time, right? Like,
Yeah. And then also like people also can have the talking points and still
oh
not
yeah,
have the actions.
oh 100%.
And they genuinely do have the talking points. They just don't even connect that their actions are not matching
Yeah,
the thought process. So, and I mean, I don't, there's some people in this world I don't want to be. And I said it in my last episode, and I don't know if it'll be, I think it should air before this one. So it would be the last episode that people are listening to. But I was like, I don't want to be white because of the things that they have to unlearn. And I definitely don't want to be a dude because of the things that they have to unlearn. It's too much work.
yeah.
So like, no, I don't envy any of that work that is involved.
That's a
So
great, you know, that's a really interesting perspective. See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I would have never thought of that because like you'd think people would want it because like easiness, right? You know, supposed
mhm,
easiness, but then like in the world we live in, which I think is much better than the worlds of past, you know, there is yeah, there's a lot of conditioning to unlearn that we just take for granted, you know, and like whether it's as a man, whether it's men with other men or men with women, like there are a lot of things that I'm just like, shoot, I don't know how to navigate this, and like understanding my masculinity was just like this journey itself because like I just I look at the people differently and I look at my manhood differently. And you know, like I was never well, I never got into sports because I was born with a heart condition.
mm,
So I couldn't do sports, I couldn't play contact sports. And it was all I loved playing football as a kid. I wanted to be on the wrestling team, couldn't do any of that. And so I got into music and I started playing drums and I was in band and like it all kind of led to poetry. So I've never fit the mold of like a man in that way. Yeah,
whatever that
I'm
stereotype
not, and
is.
I'm not like I don't have. I'm secure with myself. I'm not like physically whatever. Like I don't have that physical appearance that like men are supposed like whatever the ideal, I guess. Like I'm well aware of this stuff, and you know, so I never fit that mold in any regards. And then it's so interesting because like I'll always hear people say like, "Oh, we want you know." There's a desire, supposed desire for men to be more like warm and stuff like that, and like romantic and things. And then like I perform my romance poems on stage, and they just do terribly. Like people don't like my romance poems, and I'm just like, and I don't do it for that reason, obviously. But I was just like, but like, isn't that y'all say you want that? But like, I'm doing it. Like you know, it's just interesting to like observe. Where just like, because I love my romance poems. I think they're brilliant. I think I'm a great romantic poet, but it doesn't resonate for one reason or another. I have my guesses of why, but um, but I understand also that like it's a package, right? And maybe one element of the package doesn't work for people, so that's why it's like you could have someone who you're not attracted to saying all the nice words, but you're not attracted to them, and that's fair. So it's just it's I observe a lot, and my brain then just like explores all the ideas, like, and then sometimes I have to be like, okay, that's a stupid thought, just like throw that away, you know, because I still catch myself with those typical like gender mentalities of like, oh, but like I'm doing the thing I'm supposed to be. So it's, I don't know how I got into this, but I love talking about my masculinity. Actually, it's a lot of fun. But like these aren't things people ask me about because this is usually what encompasses the conversation.
Well, it is still amazing. So, can you tell me a unique fact about yourself?
Oh, a unique fact about myself. Let's see. I What is a unique fact about myself? There's such simple things. There's like I know how to beatbox. Like it's
You know how to
just
beatbox?
yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I was part of an a cappella group in college.
Are you? Oh goodness. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
because I used to play the drums. I was in a band in high school. So I because I didn't have a drum set with me 24/7, I just kind of like taught myself to beatbox to practice. That way I could at least keep the rhythm and the flow of like what I wanted to play. So and then one of my friends also knew how to beatbox. So like we'd be in the halls of like our band, like wherever because we were also in like what is the term, marching band and stuff like that, and so like we'd
Mhm.
be in the band halls and we'd just be beatboxing together. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, there's that. I was in a band. We were called Narwhal because we're 16-year-old losers. um I started writing poetry because of a breakup, which isn't super unique. I know a lot of people deal with that, but like that's my origin story. That's my poetry origin story. Was like this girl who I was in love with, who I thought I was going to be with for the rest of my life. Like legitimately, it wasn't like I legitimately believe like we were going to have a whole life. We thought about it too. Like we were like, we're going to have a house, going to have kids. Like we went through all of that mentally, like not like, but
Mhm.
I was sold on the idea of being with this person for the rest of my life. Um, and then, yeah, she broke up with me for a variety of reasons. Um, that also completely made me stop believing in destiny. That's a unique fact about me.
Okay.
I used to believe in destiny. I believed her and I were destined to be together. And then when she broke up, I was like, I guess that's all a lie, or that's all just nonsense. So I don't believe in destiny or like predetermined. I believe we make our own.
Mm. Okay.
Um, yeah, I could keep going. I'm sure there's other interesting stuff. Um, but yeah, I don't know if you want me to.
No, I think we're good. Um, so I'm gonna skip my other question simply because you gave us a lot of facts about your community already. So
Okay.
I'm gonna let that one go because you gave us a lot of historical facts. So anyone who listens who knows that question always comes up. I think we're good this time because we got a lot of factual stuff.
Mm,
So since you are a poet, are you gonna bless us with a poem?
sure.
Wonderful.
Gotta decide what I want to perform. Okay, so one I've been performing in my house since yesterday. It's just like one I love. I feel like it really encapsulates my relationship with poetry, and it's titled Counseling. So here we go. I write to heal my wounds because help ain't coming soon. Dependency will bring doom, but I don't sit in gloom and despair. Instead, I grin and bear it. I write and share it. All my dirty laundry, I choose to air it. I'm precise like a snare hit when I tear it up on the mic. Bright lights like the sun bathing in the glow. Behind these eyes is pain you'll never know. So the stage becomes my therapist, sharing the product of my pen and my wrist, creating Rorschach ink blots in the forms of syllables, rhymes, and verbs, introducing you to stories you've never heard about. So as I scream and shout, I'm fighting the anger, I'm feeding the rage, I'm sewing wounds inside and breaking the cage, becoming a sage because I'm turning the page to the next chapter of my life. Each time I'm on the mic, I'm fighting suicide, I'm engaging the strife. Each rhyme that I spit is a step towards the light. Verbal assault on my demons as I paint pictures with hand gestures, releasing all the pain that festers, helping me feel better inside from all the times I've been ostracized and blatantly tossed aside. I've repeatedly died inside. So two worlds collide as I speak in metaphors, engage in rabid wars. I'm on my 10th tour, hearing voices I can't ignore, like I got PTSD, except the P is for the present. And I'm still in this losing battle up the creek without a paddle. My past sins have got me rattled. So I grab the mic like my life depended on it, because it actually does. Poetry has saved me from the man I once was, continuing to heal me. It's making me whole. So what you're watching now is the resurrection of my soul. My path has taken its toll, filling me with hopelessness and sorrow. I'm up against the odds, fighting like there is no tomorrow, because there may not be.
Oof. Each time I'm on the mic, I'm fighting suicide.
Yeah.
Each time I'm on the mic, I'm fighting suicide. I'm gonna run that back one more time. Each time I'm on the mic, I'm fighting suicide. Yo, I had to grab my pen. I missed like the next 5 lines after that because I was like, I have to hold on to that line and I have to write that down.
I slowly saw you react, but I was like trying to focus, which I'm sure you know, it's weird to like, do you perform to the camera or to the screen? Like, I don't know, you know? So it was like, I saw you react, and this is like, I don't know if you have this. I was telling my friend this. I can perform, but also like watch myself perform and hear myself perform and watch people's reactions and still be fine. Like, it's this weird third person that I become when I perform, and maybe other people can do it. It's like, it's amazing though, because like I'll be like, oh, I should have said that word differently, or I should have paused here while I'm performing. Like,
Yes.
I'm still going, but 2 lines ago, I was like, I should have said this thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think it happens best when you're memorized, but
Yeah.
it's a weird disconnect that happens, but it only happens when you are, even if you're not memorized, when you're better connected to your poem,
Yeah.
because then you're able to sort of gauge a lot more things happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
It is a kind of creepy thing that can happen, but it
Yeah.
absolutely is a thing, because then you're like, okay, no, now you have to get higher at this point, lower this. You're doing a self-coaching,
Yep.
simultaneous watching. Oh, and then they like that line. Okay,
Get
let's
ready
hit
for,
that
yeah,
again.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're like, oh,
Yeah,
that person over there really like that one. Okay.
exactly. I was like, oh, I see that. All right. Yeah.
It's like, it's not just the overall crowd. You notice the individual people, like, oh, that person's eyes just widened. Like, oh wow, okay. You know, like, and that happens a lot because I value being really raw on the mic. As you've noticed, like, I don't shy away from saying what I feel. And so you get those reactions from people because it's just like, oh, I wasn't expecting him to go that like deep or that personal or that real. But like, that's where I live. I live in the raw.
Yeah, that line though.
Yeah.
I mean, that line, I think there's so many of us who can, those of us who write,
Yeah.
I think so many of us can relate to that line. We may not have written that line, or some version, like may not have written some version of that line for ourselves,
Yeah.
but that is so true. Like, that's
Mhm.
why I was like, I have to grab that line. Like, I don't know. I had to stop listening to everything else for a second. I
Fair
was like, I
enough.
know he's saying some other stuff that's crazy.
Yeah.
I wish he would slow down so I could catch it, but that doesn't matter. I gotta hold on to this line for this moment, because this line right here, though, they're like, do you know what he just said? Like,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
line,
It's
yeah.
that's a, I love when, and I guess is why talking to another poet writer is awesome, because like, I feel like a lot of times, maybe you feel this too, people are like, oh yeah, that was a great poem. And I'm like, no, but like, what did you think about like this line, that line? What did you think about like the concept, right? Because like, I titled the poem Counseling, right? And so it's all about like it being therapy for me, and like, you know, literally keeping me sane. So it's just like, oh, but like people don't just like comment on that. And I understand, and I'm not like ever like trying to get someone to say anything. But when someone does, when someone's like, oh, like this line, or I really liked how you know, correlate this with this, I'm just like, oh, they got it. Like that's like fulfilling to me because I was like, that's the whole point of why I put it out there.
I mean, the whole thing of like, just generally speaking, the like, I mean, I heard you do the drum thing, and I would not have appreciated it as
Yeah,
much without knowing that you used to play drums, right? Like that would have never like connected before.
they're
I would have
Easter
heard
eggs.
it, but I was like, oh, okay, all right, I see what you did there. You used your drum history into that line. All right, I got you. So
They're
like I
Easter
heard it,
eggs.
but I probably would not, if you didn't say drums in this episode, I would have never, maybe I would have heard it, but
True.
it wouldn't have resonated the same way. So I
Yeah.
heard that. But the whole idea of like, I think anyone who's a writer, especially we poets, like, I think I'm gonna correct that statement. Anyone who writes, because I had this whole conversation yesterday. Like, so my boyfriend is a poet too.
Okay,
And
nice.
so he and I were having this conversation about slam because he's older and he was really big in slam when I was just starting poetry. I started poetry when I was first starting to perform. It was the early 2000s. He was already on the slam circuit.
Oh, okay, nice.
So he was doing the thing. He's done, and we've had like this whole conversation about like slam and all that other stuff. So we were talking in depth last night about like our feelings on slam, and we have different reasons for feeling very similarly about slam. And so we were talking about it, and just the so like, and some people just get into this for hype, cred and stuff, but not about like soul.
Right.
And so people who are writing for soul, we're writing to live.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about the credit. It's not about the
Ooh,
rest of that. We're
you're gonna have to
writing
pause
to,
there. You're gonna have to pause there. That's a bar. That's a damn, yeah, 100%.
like, we're writing to live. Like,
Mhm.
like I performed, and I don't think you heard that poem because I performed, but I don't think I've read it around you. I don't know. I don't know what I've read around you.
Yeah.
But I read this poem about Philando Castile,
Mm,
and I can't even think of the name of it right now, but it's one of the poems I read more frequently than not. And it's about Father's Day, but it's really about the day that I almost killed myself.
mm,
And it's about me choosing not to take the bottle of pills.
right.
But it was all like, and it all comes from a moment where I really was like looking at a full bottle of sleeping pills, and I was debating, enjoy the bottle or not. And
Right.
it started because I was watching an episode of Trevor Noah, and Trevor Noah made a joke about Father's Day sucking, and it was right up behind Philando Castile dying. And I was like, why am I here? Nobody wants us. Nobody wants Black folk here. This whole
Mm,
world sucks. There's all this other pressure that was happening, and personally, but it made the whole personal experience that I was having around being Black just tied all together. And I was like, why?
right.
And when he made that joke, it wasn't a joke, but it was just like, yeah, no, why be here in a place that doesn't want me here?
Right.
And that was the message. And I kept staring at the bottle and all that other stuff. And then a friend interrupted me when I was just in contemplation. And she didn't interrupt me, but I just picked up my phone instead. And
Mm,
she, having also known that place, noticed I was off and kept talking
mm,
to me.
mm,
And then the energy passed, and I started writing this poem. So that poem was actually written in the moment of me,
wow.
like, I almost did this.
Yeah.
And so, like, when I say we are writing to live,
Yeah.
we are writing to like poetry is literally saving our lives.
Yeah.
So that I think that's why that line like is true, because people be thinking that like we just writing for clout, because some people are just writing for clout.
Yeah.
But those of us who are really writing, we're writing to work out some demons. We're writing to find ourselves. We're writing to figure out who we are. We're writing to figure out how to deal with this world.
Yeah.
We're writing to heal. We're writing to grieve. We're writing to scream. We're writing to exist in madness, and we're writing to live, and so I think, and for counseling, so like
Yeah.
that's why that poem just like, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And see, this, everyone, this is why Nav is who I like. This is why he was on the show today. Like, do you understand Do you understand why I was like, of course this is who I'm inviting to the show? Because this is who Nav is. Come on, come on. So yeah,
Thank you.
sorry. I just
No, you're fine. I appreciate it. I have a hard time with compliments.
but they're all, and I get that there's ego, so we have to watch that. But I don't have to watch your ego for you. I'm just telling you
Yeah.
that I appreciate you. If I don't
Oh,
ever get a chance to say it again, if I haven't said it enough in the past, please know that I've been a fan from the moment I saw you on stage the first time, and I have been so honored just to learn more about you and your community. Um, and if people are questioning whether or not this man is genuine, from the years that I've known him, I have not seen anything inconsistent, for whatever that means. So believe it or not, people may or may not think I'm consistent, whatever, but
yeah.
I have seen nothing inconsistent about this man in the whole time I've known him, or I've got to witness from just the side window and just like, nope,
Thank you.
everything's still the same. So
That means a lot because it's what I strive to do, and the fact that it can be recognized by people. My birthday just passed actually, and so like I had friends over, and my friend was like, "Oh, everybody should go around and say one thing they like about Nuff." I was like, "No, no, let's not do this." But like, as much as it was like weird, but it was really nice because like it it showed me that everything I try to be as a person is recognized. Like that's always my worry is like, are people noticing it? I don't need it to be validated, but it's just like I don't, I just want to know that like when I choose to be someone, people understand that is who I am. Like I try to be my authentic self at every turn. And sometimes that leads me to getting in trouble because I'm a little too honest with things, or you know, I try to communicate things and people, take it whatever, but I still value the fact that I know that when I interact with someone, I'm being my authentic self. And hopefully that encourages them to be their authentic self because in South Asian society, we're not encouraged to be that way. And it's probably same in other communities, but like it's the community I grew up in. And like everybody, not everybody, but so many people are focused on status and image and judgment and what people are going to think. There's literally a phrase, right, that a lot of first, second generation, like my generation of South Asians will refer to, and it's lo kya kenge, which means what will people think or what will people say, right? Because our parents, our communities say that so much to us, like, oh, I want to be an artist, I want to be a poet. Lo kya kenge. What are people going to think? What do people say? Because they care. I don't care. I don't care what a random auntie or uncle thinks. I just want to live my life. And so that's why that's one of the reasons I strive to be my authentic self, is that hopefully my own community, the people around me go, oh, he can be himself. He's a poet. He's a videographer. He's a content creator. Why can't I do what I want to do? Whatever that is. It could be law. It could be dance. It could be magic. Like, I don't care. Whatever it is you want to do. If you have a passion for it, do it. And like, don't let what people think dictate that. And I've always strived to put that out there as an artist, but also as someone who you interact with on a personal level.
I love it. I love it. So my last two questions. First one being, how can we who are not part of the community support your community?
This is a really great question. I think, the first step comes with understanding us, right? Because like you can, you know, advocate in different ways of like signing petitions or rallying or these kind of things, but like I don't want people to do anything half-heartedly. So like the first step I would say is just understanding and learning more, educating yourselves about the Sikh faith. There are several prominent organizations like now I'm blanking, Sikh Coalition, another one called SALDEF, which is the Sikh American Legal Defense and Education Fund. These they work to help raise awareness, but also they fight for civil rights of Sikhs and people. So you could support them in that way, but I really think it starts with just educating yourself because society isn't going to do it for you. And so I briefly alluded to this story, but someone messaged me and they told me they work in a hospital, right? And because of the pandemic, the hospital was mandating that people shave their beards because of the masks and everything. And they had said that they had a Sikh coworker and they had heard other coworkers kind of like speaking a little, negatively or rudely about this Sikh coworker because they weren't going to shave because it's against our faith to remove our hair. Um, and so this person explained the significance of case. I mentioned it's one of those articles of uncut hair to the hospital, to the coworkers, and helped that coworker, that Sikh coworker, get an exemption. Um, and that is advocating, but they wouldn't have been able to do that if they didn't know, right? So
Mm,
that's why I always say it's important to know and understand. And like maybe in that instance with the student, if someone else knew, they could have maybe been able to somehow assist with the situation. Um, so many of these things kind of happen. I remember when I was in Louisiana for that one show, we went out to like some, I guess it was a bar or something, and like you have to, or maybe it was just whatever restaurant, but for whatever reason they're like, oh, no hats allowed. I was like, this isn't a hat, and we kind of had to like fight with them a little. They're like, hey, this is a religious article, I'm not going to remove it, and like we eventually got in, but it's like these little encounters, these daily encounters. That's the thing, because like yes, hate crimes happen, but like I don't expect anybody to be Superman and like somehow stop a hate crime, unless they're in the vicinity. And even then, I'm not going to say like, hey, you got to go get involved because like you have to take care of yourself, right? But it's these daily encounters of not being able to, go to certain places with our articles of faith, or someone, harassing us because of our faith, or whatever these instances may be, your workplace in situations. And so the way to combat those things is education.
awesome. Thank you. Um, and also, well, it'll be part of the next question, but follow Nav and learn more. Learn more. Do the work to learn more, period.
Mm.
Because there's so many resources. There's always a lot of resources. Go find the resources. Do the work. So how do we support you, Nav? Nav, sorry. First time I messed that up.
It's okay. I didn't want to say anything. I was like, I think she'll correct it, so it's fine.
I sorry. I
You're
was I
fine.
was
Don't worry.
good. So I was so
Yeah.
good
Oh
today.
yeah. I don't get upset when people mess up. I'll just let them know. But you corrected yourself, so I didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, because I'm big on names. I'm big
Yeah.
on names because people like to think my name is Dara, and I like to cut them when they want to say that wrong. So no, how do we support or follow you?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. I don't really use Twitter though, because that's a cesspool.
It is.
um, Nav the Poet. You can check out my content. I talk about my faith a lot, but I also I share my poetry. I talk about movies and film, and I talk about representation in media because I studied film and television in college, and that's where my passion for representation kind of grew, is understanding that. Is actually one of my favorite stories. So I showed a poem to one of my film professor. I showed him the video because I was just like, oh, maybe you could tell me like how to, do better with the video. And he's like, the video's fine. And then he says, but your face needs to be on screen. And in the 19 years of my life at that point, I never heard anyone encourage this face be on screen. A turban and beard, especially after 9/11, no one wanted this face on screen. But he was like, no, your face needs to be on screen. I was just like, huh, you know what? You're right. Like all it took was that one person saying like, no, your face needs to be on screen. And I was like, so now anytime someone says the opposite, I'm like, no, screw that. My face needs to be on screen. My film professor said so. But so yeah, I talk a lot about representation in media and trying to get, not only Sikh representation, but all our representation to be more accurate, more respected, and treated with the level of dignity it deserves. And so that's a big thing. So yeah, social media. I have a YouTube channel. I mostly have started with actually, yeah, this is another way you can learn about the Sikh faith. I started a podcast called Rooted in Sikhi. And so I have conversations with Sikhs about the role the faith plays in their lives, professional,
Mhm.
personal, like how does it impact, what kind of influence does it have on their lives? Because it's, as I was saying earlier in this episode, like it's one thing to say what our beliefs are, but how are the people in the community practicing it? So I've interviewed people. One of my friends, he joined the military and he had to fight to get an accommodation to serve with his articles of faith. So we talk about that whole legal battle. One of my friends, she's an artist, she's a painter and a calligrapher. So we talk about how she implements, you know, art and Sikh together and everything like that. And so there's different people from different, different Sikhs from different walks of life, and we get to explore what it means to be a Sikh in their, field in their life. And I think it's a really beautiful thing to, one, not only make me the sole representative of the faith, because I never want to be that. That's way too much of a burden on my shoulders. But it just, yeah, it's a more practical understanding, or more tangible than me just saying like, well, Sikhs believe in this.
That's awesome. So unfortunately, that's the episode, but thank you, Nav the Poet, for being here, for being awesome, for being you, for speaking on behalf of your community, for being just the terrific individual that I've known you to be for, oh goodness, the past lots of years that I've known you. It's got to be, I mean, the pandemic's been 3 years, but it's a couple of years that we've
Yeah,
known each other now.
yeah, it's been a
Um,
while.
and I've enjoyed this conversation so much, so much. I've learned a lot, but I've also not just learned a lot about the community and not just about you, but just also really thinking about the commonalities
Mhm.
between our communities. So I just thank you for the time that you've dedicated to having this conversation. Thank you, everyone who has listened to on behalf of today or any other episode. Please hit that subscribe button either on the podcast, and also if you're feeling extra generous, there is a way to subscribe to the podcast financially. So please do that as well on Anchor. Otherwise, I will speak to you next time. Thank you.